welcome back. And you're watching the Tennessee Valley this morning, and we're glad that you've joined us today. It is 7:02, and it is 64 degrees. I'm Dan Howell here with Patty Lauren, my co-host today, and we have with us a new guest today that's not been on the show before, Dr. Subroto Kundu, and he is a neurologist in Cleveland, Bradley County, and we are just glad to have you today. We're going to learn some things that probably we didn't know before.
Certainly hope so.
Tell us, first of all, tell us about yourself and your background, Dr. Kundu.
Well, I am a neurologist in clinical practice. I trained in Temple University in Philadelphia, and I did my fellowship in epilepsy and EEG at the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Okay.
And subsequently, I've been in clinical practice in the San Francisco Bay Area for 20 years, between 1989 and 2009. And then, of course, there has been a great need for this specialty in Cleveland. Cleveland is a wonderful community, and it's a wonderful medical staff, and pretty much most of the specialties have been filled, but there was probably a gaping hole for this specialty, and that's why I'm here. So I have been here for a little over a year.
When you decided to settle in Cleveland and Bradley County, did you do some research on the community? I mean, you said there was a need in the community for your specialty, but what about the community itself, the quality of life and the location, the geography and all of that? What appealed to you about Cleveland in that regard?
Well, the positive thing to say is that after my 20 years in San Francisco Bay Area, which has been a wonderful place to stay in, I did feel when our children left and all went off to college, we probably needed a change. And I have to say that at that time when I thought that I would look for a different place, pretty much I had the option of going anywhere, and the fact that I chose to come here probably says
it speaks volumes.
It does. As a matter of fact, in the moment in today's world, if you say that you're available and people look at your qualifications and background and what desire that you come into their community, they put forward their best. And I've had that from literally all across the country. Of course, I have to say that I didn't want to go back into the snow coming from California.
I don't blame you.
So I had narrowed my choices down towards place in Florida, in Georgia, and here. And between these three, I believe my wife chose this place. So I don't know that I can take full credit for choosing California, but I believe she chose very well. And if you look back, it pretty much has everything that a community needs. And it is pretty, it is, well, let's overlook the tornadoes. People can have that anywhere. But weather-wise, I really can't complain.
The quality of life.
Quality of life is indeed very, very positive.
You've got of course, the outdoor activities and the beautiful scenery and the lakes and the mountains and the rivers, and then just the entertainment value. Like tomorrow night, we have this benefit concert. World-class entertainment comes through Cleveland all the time. And of course, the university has a lot to do with that.
That's true.
So we're honored that you and your wife chose Bradley County, and you add to our quality of life by doing so.
Thank you.
And of course, another great thing is we are so centrally located between two big cities. Actually, three. We've got Chattanooga, Nashville, and Atlanta, and then Knoxville. So we're right in the hub of everything. So this was probably a pretty good choice, and we're glad that you chose.
Thank you. Well, we didn't come for Chattanooga and Atlanta. We came for Cleveland.
But those are areas you can go to for a weekend and just enjoy yourself, and then come back home. And that's a good thing. The study of neurology, or the practice of neurology, is maybe not be something that some viewers are familiar with. So give us a broad overview of what neurology actually is, Dr. Kundu.
Well, neurology has to do with disorders of the brain and the nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord constitute the central nervous system, and then there's a peripheral nervous system as the nerves, innervate all parts of the body, you have to understand that everything in the body works under control of the nervous system. So it is very important to understand that process, and there are many disorders that are present that does need the expertise of a neurologist to handle. Obviously, there was a time when a general practitioner tended to literally everything. That time has really gone, particularly with the evolution of the technology. When tools that are brought in today, tools need to be learned. So people have to focus on them and to use them and bring that in conjunction with the other specialties that are present. If you think in terms of cardiology, if you think in terms of gastroenterology and endocrinology, all of these are very, very sophisticated activity that people need to spend their lifetimes before they can claim that they can handle diseases of, relevant to these specialties. So the same is true for neurology. It is not possible for anybody to let us say, be in general practice or internal medicine and have that specialty when it comes to, let us say, handling a case of epilepsy, handling a case of multiple sclerosis, strokes, of course, and Parkinson's disease. So even migraines, there is headaches, and then there are complicated issues that need to be handled by people who solely focus on these things. So there are these whole categories of disorders that I deal with, and that is the practice of neurology.
Yeah, and so it is a very specialized field, and I would imagine because you mentioned technology changes so fast, there has to be an element of continuing education on your part in order to stay up with the practice and the technology that is evolving.
Well, I don't believe a day goes by that specialist in any field can go to bed and say that I didn't learn this thing today. I mean, continuing medical education is a mandatory requirement for the basis of anybody's certification, but that is a certain number of hours in a year, and that is that those hours are spent in certain didactic situations. But I believe learning is from every patient that we see. And every patient, believe it or not, brings something new that has to be viewed in the context of what we have known and learned, and then we learn again. And I believe that's an everyday phenomenon.
What are some of the high-tech equipment that we would recognize the name of that you use in the practice of neurology now? There used to be just started off years ago, the X-ray. Boy, that was a great development. But the X-ray is kind of the old hat now. We've got so many other pieces of technology. What are some of the things that are used in your practice?
Well, the important thing about investigations, we have to understand that investigations focus on two aspects of any organ. One aspect is the structure of that organ. So when you say X-rays, you're looking at the structure. Of course, X-rays is very well suited to image bones. Now you can use that X-ray and take that same penetration through the tissue and use a computer to enhance that, and you can get what's called a CT scan. So a CAT scan, or computerized axial tomography, that's the word, CAT, what you're doing is you're generating an image, but the basis is still the X-ray. So therefore X-rays pass through soft tissue, they don't pass through bone, and then it has a different absorption through different types of tissue, and you're using that difference to create an image. So CAT scan came as an enhancement from the X-ray. Modern world and modern technology are, the basic tools may be the same, but the computer allows us to go beyond a certain dimension. So the CAT scan now then became one image. But then everything got blown off the field by the MRI.
Okay, that was my next question. What about an MRI?
So the MRI is an absolute futuristic tool that allows the imaging of a whole tissue and a whole being, for that matter, in a completely non-invasive way. So the difference between a CAT scan and the MRI, that in the CAT scan you actually are using X-rays, and as you know, that doesn't matter how low the emission that you have from an X-ray, you do have a certain degree of exposure. So a CAT scan technically gives you probably the same amount of radiation exposure as a chest X-ray would.
Okay.
So you're using very small amounts of radiation compared to what we did in the past. But nevertheless, you are doing it. And in an MRI, there is really no radiation.
None at all.
Not at all.
I did not know that.
So you are using a magnetic field in which to stimulate the water molecules, and you're literally generating an image of every water molecule in the body.
Wow.
So the water density of various tissues become the basis of an image, because as you know, body is the majority water. So 90% depending on the tissue. Bones again have less water. So what happens is that because of the less water, the bone actually disappears from the picture, which is great because particularly for the brain, it becomes a wonderful tool to study the brain. So the MRI therefore comes as the structural test. Like I said, there are two types of tests that you need to do. One is to test the structure of an organ, and one is the function of an organ. We can always use analogies in cardiology because in my experience, lay people have a better understanding of cardiology. The heart is a simple muscular organ, and whatever pertains to the heart, you can then extend that logic to all other organs. So if I were to study the heart in its structure, then I would use, let us say, I can use an echocardiogram that visualizes the structure of the heart. You can actually see the valves, you can actually see blood flow if you wanted, you can see the thickness of the walls. So all that is a structural test for the heart.
I see.
Now you can think in terms of the function. So if you look at the electrical function of the heart and you do an EKG, so you would be now looking at the comprehensive function of that organ, both from a structural and a functional standpoint. So we bring that same logic into the brain, and the MRI would be a wonderful tool to image the brain in 3D if you want it. Then you can go one step further, and that's where again the modern technology comes in. You can in fact visualize the metabolism inside various parts of the brain. So that's when you come into what's called a functional MRI. Not to talk of the fact that you can enhance the perfusion. You can actually look at the way blood flows inside that organ. So there are various aspects of the brain that can be seen just with this tool of the MRI. But then there is the other functional aspect of the brain that you need to see at the brain waves. The same as you have the EKG for the heart, you have the EEG. Again, the EEG can be enhanced in very many ways. And then you can have something called an evoked potential, where you give a stimulus of any type. Either it's a visual stimulus, it's a tactile stimulus, or a sound stimulus. And the stimulus, we know, passes through the whole brain in a particular path. And that each of the paths is an electrical activity that generates a particular pattern of electricity. So any aberration in the whole path can be figured out, and which is a very, very sophisticated tool. So all these are functional tests. So these are just two examples. Of course, then there are many more where you think in terms of the PET scans, where you're using radionuclides which emit a particular certain degree of discharges that can be picked up and generate an image of an organ depending upon where a particular chemical goes. So you can tag a chemical and send it all over the brain and see where it goes. So it just goes on and on, that there are very, very sophisticated tools in today's world to study these organs.
It sounds like you have to be a technician as well as a physician to figure out how to use.
Well, a physician is a technician of sorts.
I guess so.
He just, you know, I think that every specialty, there has to be a hands-on, there has to be a depth of understanding of that field and a dedication that allows us to then finally use all these tools for the betterment of the patient.
Yeah. We have to take a break, I'm told. We'll come back. I want to talk to you about specifically some ailments that people have. I have some friends who have migraines. Of course, I have a friend recently who had a stroke. I'd like to talk about that and how neurology addresses those ailments and maybe some other things. And I hope you'll stay with us. It's 7:17. We're talking to Dr. Kundu from the, what is the name of your practice?
Well, the practice is under my name,
okay.
But I would probably like to call it East Tennessee Neurology.
Okay, okay. So we'll get information on how you can contact Dr. Kundu when we come back. Please stay with us.
Kyle Dodge Chrysler Jeep, located at 511 South Lee Highway in Cleveland, is your #1 Dodge, Chrysler, and Jeep dealer in this area. Stop by and see the brand new 2011 Chrysler 200. The 200 is essentially a new nameplate with a significant facelift to the outgoing 2010 Chrysler Sebring. A beautiful vehicle at an unbeatable price. And while you're there, check out the all-new Jeep Grand Cherokee and the newly designed Dodge Durango. Redesigned, revamped, and reinvigorated. Yes, the Dodge Durango is back, bigger and better than ever. Kyle Dodge Chrysler Jeep offers a complete parts and service department with qualified service technicians to fix and repair your vehicle. So for your next brand new or pre-owned vehicle, make it Kyle Dodge Chrysler Jeep, located at 511 South Lee Highway in Cleveland.
I'm Wes Robbins with Landmark Insurance Brokerage. When it comes to employee benefits, we've got you covered. Call me today for the best service and best solutions to your group health and employee benefits needs. At Landmark Insurance Brokerage, we've got you covered.
I'm Dr. James Markham, host of the television program Heart of Health, seen right here on WTNB television. Thursday at 7 o'clock, Friday at 8 a.m., or Sunday at 3:30 p.m.
Volunteer Ridipest LLC has been serving Cleveland and the surrounding areas for over 40 years. Their qualified, experienced technicians are trained in all the latest techniques to keep your home pest-free. Volunteer Ridipest LLC offers Mosquito Guard, which keeps mosquitoes out of your yard and out of your life. Their monthly and quarterly treatments are backed by their 100% money-back guarantee. For all your pest removal needs, call Volunteer Ridipest LLC today at 423-472-7736.
Welcome back, and you're watching the Tennessee Valley this morning on this beautiful Wednesday morning at 7:19. Our special guest is neurologist Dr. Subroto Kundu, and we are talking about some of the specialty practices of neurology, and we're glad that Dr. Kundu and his wife chose Bradley County. He said he practiced in San Francisco for 20 years and a graduate of Temple University, I believe, and they chose Bradley County in Cleveland, and we're thrilled that they did. And we just are learning all kinds of things about some of the ailments that we have. One of the things I wanted to talk about is, well, there's 2 or 3 things, and we may not get all to it today, but we'll have you back, I'm sure, probably in the next few weeks.
Certainly.
But I have a friend who suffers with migraines. Just never know when it'll come up, but at least seems like once a week she'll get a migraine. And I didn't know, but this has its basis in neurology, I assume.
Yes, of course. As you must have noted in your friend, that the pain is in the head.
Yeah.
That is the realm of neurology. And it is unfortunately a very, very prevalent situation that really, if you look at the numbers in the community, I do not know anybody who does not have headache or migraine sometime or other in their lives. People who are distressed are people who have it either on a regular basis or too frequent a basis.
So stress is something that enhances a migraine?
Yes. One cannot blame everything to stress.
Yeah.
Stress makes any condition worse. But migraine as a phenomenon is an entity. Of course, I have to say that technically the word migraine is not necessarily synonymous with headache.
Okay.
So people tend to use, in my experience, I believe a a patient is likely to use the word migraine to describe a very bad headache. And I asked them the question, if I hit the head with a baseball bat, would you have a headache or a migraine? And so the severity of a headache doesn't necessarily constitute a migraine.
Yeah. Now, how do you tell the difference between
well,
terrible migraine?
the difference lies in much of the clinical presentation of the headache, but to go back one level into the possible cause of the mechanism of how that headache comes about, is that there is probably a vascular phenomenon. There are a couple of very common factors that leads to recurrent headache or persistent headache. One of the common factors has to do with the muscles of the neck and the scalp. You have to understand that the scalp is really a muscular organ. I mean, we see animals, you know, primates, chimpanzees, and you'll see that they can actually move the whole scalp back and forth. I know some people who can. And if you look at our foreheads, and you'll find there are creases all over.
Yeah.
And these creases happen because actually there's a constant contraction of the muscles. So a constant contraction of any muscle is a basis for pain. It is very difficult to keep any muscle in the body in a persistently contracted state without generating pain. And again, the example I tell people is that try and lift your arm and just hold it up there and see how long you can do it. And it is surprising that if you try to do it, you'll find that you can't do it for long.
Yeah.
I mean, a minute is too long. So what really happens is, even though the muscles are created and engineered for strength and movement, the movement cannot be sustained beyond a certain level. Now, the head and neck muscles, on the other hand, have to have a sustained contraction. Yet they have to relax. So it doesn't happen in a normal day session that your neck muscles can be completely relaxed, because otherwise your head would roll forward. Same is true with the scalp. And when you talk of stress, a stress is a situation where there is an unconscious contraction of muscles.
Yeah, you're not even aware of it.
That's right. We're not even aware of it. But conscious relaxation, as we talk about often, is a means of really relaxing the muscles, and it does a great benefit to the body by way of comfort that we can get. In any case, this is one of the mechanisms of people who suffer from intractable headaches. Migraines in general was a word that was brought into use for a different mechanism, and that mechanism was a theory. The theory has been shown experimentally, where you can have a contraction of blood vessels in the brain, blood vessels that supply the brain. Now, why that contraction happens, we don't exactly know, but the contraction can be replicated by chemical stimulants, which we know have got a strong vasoconstrictor capability. There's a substance called serotonin that does that. And if you were to inject serotonin by a catheterization of one of the major arteries of the brain, you can in fact demonstrate that you show a contraction in that area of supply.
Now, is serotonin a chemical also naturally produced in the body?
It is. It is in fact produced by the body. It is secreted, for example, by the platelets, which are tiny elements in the blood that cause the stickiness of blood to begin with. So, and one of the things that the platelets does, if you were to cut a blood vessel, is to come and secrete, and the blood clot so that the blood vessels go into spasm over there. It's a very beneficial mechanism for decreasing blood loss. But if you were to have a contraction in certain area of the blood supply of the brain, that contraction then causes an abnormal function of that area of the brain, which can then produce a neurologic phenomenon. For example, it could be in the back of the brain, and people see very strange patterns of light, something we can call, let us say, fortification spectra. It is almost like you're seeing bands of little fences which are radiating away, and bizarre colors of light. So these are classic pictures of migraine. Not that everybody has it to that degree. But that deficit, that neurologic phenomenon that precedes the headache, and then of course that contraction of the blood vessel passes, and there is a flush of blood in that same distribution which causes the pounding headache. That is a very, very classic picture of a migraine. So you recognize the difference between somebody who has a constant persistent headache of the tension headache variety which I just described before, and you have this second pattern where you have this vascular phenomenon. So then this problem of migraines got studied, and the development of tools which came as medicine has to do with attempting to combat that flushing part of the second half of the migrainous phenomenon. And then you would use a chemical which by itself produces some vasoconstriction. So that generated development of medications that people will recognize as Imitrex, Maxalt. These are the medications which are the triptan group. So there's a whole family of drugs that were generated, so triptans, which has to do with constriction. So there you go, you have a certain tool to combat one category of headaches. But then the muscle element cannot be ignored. And as much as we try to have somebody relax, it doesn't always work out. So as of October last year, the Federal Drug Agency, the FDA, approved a method by which they allow neurologists to inject Botox, which is a chemical that paralyzes muscles. So in certain areas of the scalp, injections, if they are done, they can allow this individual to
muscle relax,
go to the next phase and get a relief over a sustained period of time.
That's very
so these are tools, like I say, they come from understanding what the problem is and using appropriate.
And that's the key, is understanding the problems before you can find the solution.
Of course.
Well, that's very interesting. We have about 30 seconds left. I've just been given the sign, Dr. Kundu, but we appreciate you coming in, and we appreciate you choosing Cleveland and Bradley County as a place to continue your practice. And I've been to San Francisco. It's a beautiful city, but we're glad you chose Bradley County.
Thank you very much.
And we hope to see you again. So glad you joined us today, and I'm Dan Howell, and this is Patty Lawrence. She's my co-host today, and we appreciate her coming in as well. Don't forget the concert tomorrow night at the Con Center. It's to benefit the disaster victims from the storms.
Yes.
And I plan to be there, and hope you will be too. It's going to be a great day, going to be a little warm, so try to stay out of the hot sun if you can, and we will see you back here on Thursday on the Tennessee Valley this morning. Have a great day.
Bye.